being the unofficial opposition for decades and the unofficial ombudsman for decades, the pressure's not quite the same nowadays.
Looking at this administration, just as an outsider and as a seasoned, long-time Tynwald member, and you've seen other administrations, do administrations get to a point where, say, at the end of a third year, they need a refresh?
Well, the problem you've got is a fundamental issue of the systems of government on the island. Your problem is you should have a separation between Parliament and the executive and the government. For many years, I was the only member of Tynwald, the Parliament, that wasn't in the executive. So you're going to have this problem when you have effectively got a one-party state by patronage. And this is the real issue that needs to be addressed. Lack of steam. Well, the old saying was that a government is as good as its opposition, and there isn't any effective opposition.
There are certain people, aren't there? I mean, there's Lib Van in there, and some of the likes of Daphne Kane and others have voiced opposition on subject matter.
But the problem you've got to remember is you've got to have a system where you've got to have it resourced properly, and you don't have it resourced properly. So consequently, when a minister speaks, he's got a chief executive to write a speech. He's got a researcher to manage the facts within it. He's got a PR man. I mean, let's be honest with it. There's more journalists work for Isle of Man government than work for the media now. In the old days, they were frightened of losing the advertising revenue.
You had researchers, didn't you, in your time as well?
No, I had people who'd help me do research for me, but doing it for voluntary and doing it on a cost basis is a totally different situation. You know, you can work the deadlines. I think that's one of the biggest problems you've got with this. It's just so cosy, isn't it?
How do you shake that up then?
Well, the problem you've got to have honest party politics. That's the issue you've got to do. You've got to have people who are prepared to change the system. Remember, I lost nearly 20 years' worth of ministerial pay for taking the role I took. Not many will do that. Some people need to be saying that they're not going to be just cozying up to the executive, and that's the biggest problem.
You were at the one ministerial position, didn't you, in your time?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that was at education, and there seemed to be troubles there.
Well, of course there was, because they were out to try and destroy one's integrity. I mean, there's problems, it seems, at education now. Well, I mean, it's different now. I mean, the problem was when I was there. I mean, you're told by your officers that 40% of the kids were going to get a preschool place, and 60% kids were going to get nothing the following year. Plus the fact that the working mums that needed it had to leave work at 11:30. Well, most working mums cannot do that. It was a piece of nonsense. But I mean, it was engineered as much as anything, as far as I was concerned, as the minister. I mean, they were trying to force me to bring in tuition fees. Brought in UCAS points up. That meant that they had to, instead of do it at 160, they were to do it at 240, which cut down the numbers, because being a university student is not a lifestyle choice. It should be for education.
How do you feel the Howard Quayle administration's doing as an onlooker from the outside?
It worries me dreadfully that it's going back. What people forget is that in 1985, the average working wage was 45% of the Manx worker compared to the Brits. Unless you had the thing, I think it was the Vernon scale for the teachers, you had the police, you had certain things that had UK pay policy. And I see the wages going back. I see them not addressing the fundamental issues. I mean, the problem you've really got is the fact that the civil servants are running the show. And the problem you've got is that's happening because there isn't the strategic infrastructure to develop strategic long-term policies. That's why we've got the nonsense of the frontline services being hit and the senior civil servants not being affected.
That sounds like an argument. That sounds like an argument Chris Robertshaw's making as well.
Well, it's nice to know that he is, but it's, you know, as I say, that's very good. It was disappointing that when one was sacked as Minister of Education, they reneged on the voucher scheme that they should have brought in, which would have been brought in a lot earlier and would have saved an awful lot of the infrastructure. But there was more about scoring a point at Soil and Me than worrying about what was right for kids at the time.
Do you think the current education minister may be sacked?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I still have people coming to me, and it frustrates me that I can't send them to people to be dealt with.
You miss the interaction with the constituents.
I miss the privilege of being able to look after people, and that's a privilege. The company was always a bit of a nightmare. I think nothing's changed on that front as far as self-serving is concerned. I would say they're a lot less nastier than they were when we were in, and I think that's more through the being novices as far as politics is concerned, more than anything else. But I do think that the worry I have is the onslaught of making sure the weak, the poor, and the sick don't end up being the victims of bad governance, and that's the problem.
No government or no politician seriously wants to make the vulnerable and the sick and
I think the problem has been there's a lot of politicians who don't give a damn, so long as you look after themselves for the next election. And I know I lasted 30 years in there, and that was a minor miracle when one didn't get on lots of the time with the press. But sometimes I had to be listened to because I was on one side of the room and the rest of the chamber was on the other.
Final question is the obvious one. We're only 2 years away from the next general election. Are you going to continue looking well and enjoying life from the outside, or do you want to go back into the fray?
I'm sure I'm happy enough how I am at the moment. But what I would do is I'd like to see, as an elder statesman, is to see these political parties get their act together. The situation worries me. I'm a lefty at heart. But at the end of the day, you don't spend money that you don't earn, you haven't got. But the problem I see is that the place is being lined up for the freedom to fleece by the few to the many. And my concern is that I think there'll be a fire sale if they're not careful. They don't get their economics in the right order, as far as they're spending far more than going out than coming in. And the point is, that doesn't mean that I agree with what they've done in the United Kingdom, where they've got a disgusting situation over the welfare state, and it's appalling what the Tories have done to the weak, the poor and the sick. But I do feel that that's the one issue that I worry about when we see about mention of the airport, and we mention the buses, and what concerns me is making sure that the good things that we have consolidated over the last 35 years ain't lost. We want to learn the mistakes of the United Kingdom with their privatisation.
Well, Lib Van is really the only effective party we have, but there's obviously a green agenda at the moment and the environment. With a climate crisis declared, do you see more interest from people in maybe that ticket?
I think the thing is, in the past, I was fortunate enough that we were part of the biggest economic boom the country had. The tragedy is that your kids and your grandkids should be a lot more fiscally secure than they are. But when you see what they've done, where they paid, 131 million for a 40 million pound power station, no one held to account. You've got the Irish, you had the International Business School, and the fundamental issues that need to be addressed, in my opinion, is like the Public Accounts Committee has to be people who ain't on any department of government. They should be recognised for that and paid accordingly, like they would be on a department or as a chairman of a board or whatever. None of them should be allowed to take directorships for at least 5 years after leaving the House of Keys that has any direct influence on their membership of the House of Keys. And that goes for the civil servants more importantly than the members of Tynwald, because they're the ones who are making the real policy, in my opinion.